G'day everyone, coming at you from a beautiful park here in Aussie with the third installation of these videos. I'm currently wearing this cool white logos cap sent over from Harvey at 99 Sheep. Today's video was a bit of an interesting one because it's a hard dichotomy to express, which is that of our own free will and our decision making and the providence of God, and how much trust do you place in God. Does that trust undermine your own free will or your capacity for decision making? How important is it to make really good decisions? Obviously, we know the answer to that question is yes. But practically, how do you live that out? Because there's a certain sense of detachment which comes with trust and divine providence. But you also need to balance the fact that in the world we're called to make many decisions about our lives, our vocations, basically everything. It also depends on our engagement of the will with that. So how much attention or stress do we place on those decisions, and how much trust and detachment do we place with God? And in some ways the answer is not one or the other. And I was just thinking about this in regards to giving these talks at this camp up in Queensland, which went really well. The talks were received fantastically. Did some for both boys and girls, obviously not myself, but it went really well. The camp was fantastic. The people that hosted us were really good. But I guess before that, there's always a bit of uncertainty or doubt as to whether or not you're the right person, as to whether what you're writing is actually what needs to be heard, as to whether or not you'll be able to present it right. And I think some of that is healthy in the sense that those kind of thought patterns will help you be better and improve on whatever it is that you're doing. But there's also kind of a lack of trust in that. And I think that's where the trust thing comes in, which is what I want to talk about today, which is actually having trust in the present moment and having trust that you are where God wants you to be right now. And it's easier said than done, but I think a lot of our fear and anxiety comes from, or that doubt, that second guessing of self or situation. It always comes from a lack of trust. And that's not to say that you can't question your own decisions. Again, I think that's really helpful, but at the same time, once you've made them, you should question them insofar as you can think about, well, how could I have done better next time? But it's also kind of a done deal. And there comes a point in time where you really just have to say, well, these are the cards that have been dealt. This is the situation that I or myself or both of us, metaphorically speaking, have placed myself in, and I just have to do the best with what's in front of me. And you also have to trust that this is where God wants me right now, and that somehow me being here and me being in the situation is actually really important for my development or the course of my life, even though it might not seem like that in the moment. And I guess the situation where this is most tested in is the hardships, especially if they're self-imposed. Well, why did I do this? Why did I choose that? I can't believe my car broke down. I can't believe I did this and now I'm stuck here. But it's somehow in those moments we are called to trust the most. So I wanted to read this reflection again from Divine Intimacy, which kind of spoke to me about this. And it's interesting the words that it begins with. It says, the angels, this is in the Nativity of course, promised peace to men of goodwill. And it talks about how important it is to maintain this goodwill, which we could rephrase it as this trustful will, or this will that is purely united to the will of God. So I'm going to read that to you guys now. The angels promised peace to men of goodwill. Our will is good when it is upright, docile, and resolute. It is upright when it is sincerely and entirely oriented toward good. Docile when it is always ready to follow every indication of God's will. And resolute when it is prompt to adhere to the will of God, even though difficulties and obstacles arise and sacrifices are required. The Lord is continually urging us to generosity and abnegation in all the circumstances of life, even the smallest ones. We must give ourselves to God without hesitation, certain that if God asks anything of us, he will also give us the strength to carry out his wishes. Such was the conduct of the shepherds. As soon as they heard the message of the angel, they left all, their flocks and their rest, and came with haste to Bethlehem, where they found the infant lying in the manger. They were the first to find Jesus and to taste his peace. Saint Teresa of Jesus says, "Holy peace consists in a union with God's will, such of a kind that no dissension arises between the will of God and the soul, but they are both one, not in words or in desires alone," desires being a really important one, "but also in works. When a soul finds that by doing something it can serve its spouse better, it listens to no objections raised by its mind, nor to any fears." Now I'm going to read that again. When a soul finds that by doing something it can serve its spouse better, it listens to no objections raised by its mind, nor to any fears. Basically, whenever the truly peaceful and the soul that has truly good desires finds something that he can do better effectively, or finds something in his life that would be more attuned to the will of God, or whenever I am called, for example, to do like a talk at a camp, it should allow, this is continuing the reading, should not be controlled by its mind or any fears, but allows faith to act, and considers not its own profit nor its own tranquility. This is perfect goodwill. Mary and Joseph are unsurpassable models of it. Despite the obscurity of the mystery and the great sacrifices entailed, they clung to the divine plan in total abandonment and had the supreme joy of receiving the King of Heaven in their arms. To the greatest goodwill corresponds the greatest union with God and the deepest peace and joy. So it's basically saying that, well, what it said before, the greatest union of will with God is where you're both aligned, and where when you discover these things, or when you're placed in situations where you're going to be doubting whether or not it's the right choice, where you're letting that tranquility go, you're allowing those fears to come in, like that's when you need to allow faith to act. And I think especially when it comes to things relating to the faith, let's say going to mass, doing these acts of prayers and whatnot, or doing acts of service to the church, that's really where this comes in key. And again, back to Mary and Joseph, fiat voluntas tua, mihi secundum verbum tuum. I think that's it. But be it done unto me according to thy word. And Saint Joseph, in the dream, we have the scene of Herod and the holy innocents, the massacre of all the children. When Joseph receives that vision in the dream and gets told to pack up, basically, effectively, his whole business, his carpentry, I'm sure his extended family of relatives, his home, and to take his wife who's expecting a child, or take the newborn Jesus now, and leave all of that, leave all of the comforts and safeties and security of his home, and not just down the road to a blink in another city in a nice air-conditioned car, but to cross the mountain ranges and during the winter to a foreign land. When he is called to do that, he is so filled with grace, and he has the virtue of faith to that such high degree that he was able to do that with no reservation whatsoever. And obviously he played a humongous role in salvation history. So I think we have a lot to learn from this. Yeah, I hope that was helpful. I guess it took me a while to figure out exactly what I wanted to say, but yeah, ultimately it's both things. You need to work as if everything depends on you, and pray as if everything depends on God. So yeah, apologies for the delay in the schedule. I was meaning to do this on Saturday, but it's just been so busy with travel and recovery and whatnot that I could only sort of sit down and do it now. But hope all of you guys are well. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Feast of the Epiphany. Get into it, keep working hard. We'll have another good video coming out. Might push it back a bit, but I've already got the topic in mind, so stay tuned for that one as well. All right, cheers everyone, God bless.